Hey, my name is Jon Wilhoit. I am an EOS implementer, and I'm here today to talk to a good friend of mine, Max Holland, who has been an EOS client for some time now. And I just want to make sure that we're able to give you a feel for what it's like to go through the process of implementing EOS and the outcome that you might be able to expect. So thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me.
Why don't you give a little background about you, maybe even pre-FEI, just where you came from, your career background, things like that.
So, John, I was born at a really early age.
Really?
And I, after college, I went and I moved into a lot of different areas. But my career has mainly been in the flooring industry by chance. No real reason except that that's where I got my sales background, and then quickly went into national accounts and then sales leadership, and have had a pretty long career in sales and sales leadership. And now I work for FEI Group as their executive vice president, really in charge of operations for their organization.
Okay. And explain what FEI is.
Wow, that's a hard thing to explain from somebody from outside the industry or even within the industry. But at the end of the day, we are an organization, a member organization.
Okay.
So there's 450 independent companies that are part of our organization that we help to thrive on their own terms. So we like to build opportunities for these companies, give them opportunities to share and networking and best practice sharing, and make them better independent business operators because they've been part of our organization.
Right. So it sounds like he's kind of that blend of their customers in a way, but they're also affiliates in a way. So you've got to manage that balance.
That's exactly right. We are we're the best in what we do in each industry. We start as a buying group, so we create programs with our supply partners for them to leverage their buying power. But if you interviewed them and asked them what value they get out of being part of the FEI Group, it's really the network that they build and the friendships that they build with like-minded, like-sized companies across the organization.
Yeah. Perfect. So what was going on within FEI that prompted you to think, we may need a little help in getting some things on track?
Yeah. So I told you, so my career was in sales leadership, and I was affiliated with FEI Group. And what happened was I was in what I thought was my career-ending role. Like I was on to land my plane as VP of sales at this flooring manufacturer called Mannington Mills. And I got a phone call one day from my brother-in-law, Andy Hogan. And Andy was one of the founders of FEI Group. And his business partner that he started the company with died of a heart attack. And so they called me down to say, hey, we have a leadership void and we need your help to come in and help us out. What I quickly realized when I came in was this was a company that had great success and great growth, organic growth, like you wouldn't believe, with a great P&L. The problem was everything came from like institutional knowledge. This was just a group of entrepreneurial leaders, right? Like a lot of companies that started 25 years ago. And it's not that they got lucky; they were very good at what they did. There was just no processes when I came in. Okay. And coming from corporate America, it blew my mind that we could be operating the way we're operating.
Right.
It had allowed us to be successful for a long time, but we also now had a brand new leadership team with new people in the company that didn't have all that institutional knowledge.
And that's really insightful to come in and recognize that, okay, a great P&L isn't going to last forever,
right?
If we don't do things right.
That's right. We were in EOS, what they called definitely hitting a ceiling.
Okay.
Right. And we needed a breakthrough.
Right.
Is what really opened our eyes to it.
Okay. So you're in this position where you've come in, you've got, a different perspective coming out of the corporate world where you're accustomed to processes and success and repeatable successes and creating scalability and things like that. And you walk into this organization that's been successful, probably a few egos walking the halls, and all of a sudden you realize, okay, we need to do some things better to secure our future. And as you started looking at options for that, how did you land on EOS, and what was it about EOS that made you feel comfortable, like, okay, this is the direction we need to take?
Yeah, it was kind of by accident. And when I talk about the corporate world, working in corporate and then coming to an entrepreneurial company, it was really interesting that we were probably over-processed within the corporate world, to be honest.
Oh, for sure.
And then going on the other extreme was no process. And they kind of prided themselves in that hey, we've built this company as an entrepreneurial company, and we are anti-corporate. So I came in and I learned about EOS by accident. It was somebody had shared this book with me at an industry conference that we attended here. She introduced me to this concept, and I read the book. And when I read the book for the first time, it was like nothing in the book was earth-shattering.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a collection of, Gino Wickman did a great job of taking a collection of the best stuff we've been reading for years.
Right.
And he put it into a construct that you could actually operate your business from. So you take all the stuff from Collins and Covey and Lencioni and all those great masterminds of industry, and you put it in one simple construct. And so I immediately was blown away, and what overwhelmed me with wild energy about it was the idea that you could operate your company in a really simple, in a way that really drove accountability.
Right. It's amazing how often I hear that from people. They say, this is not new to me. This is really, a collection of things that are so almost common sense.
Right.
Yet companies fail to implement these. I counsel clients on, this is simple, but it's not easy.
That's right.
And so maybe it would be good for you to touch on, as you were going through implementation, what were some of the challenges that you hit along the way?
So for implementation, well, I think the biggest challenge for me was, because I'm the type of leader that likes to act, and I'm sort of eager to act, and that's not always a good thing. I mean, I will. What did one of my bosses tell me one time? I like to jump off the building and then I'll build the parachute all the way down, right? And that's not always the best way to go.
Right.
And so luckily I had on my team a team of people that were really, our leadership team was really resistant to this idea of having something like EOS.
Interesting.
As a process. So
where that resistance was coming from?
Yeah, I mean, it came from this idea that we're entrepreneurial. We don't have an organizational chart. We don't, this is how we operate. This is how we do things. And we've done it this way for 25 years. Right. And if
we've succeeded with chaos as our motto for 25 years.
And it was chaotic, but it wasn't all chaos. Right. There were really good processes in there. We just needed to get them in and really make them better. Right. And have some things documented and hold people accountable to the right priorities and all those things. So I think what finally happened was, so my brother-in-law called me to come work here. About a year later, we sold the company to our new parent company, Nationwide Marketing Group. And with that sale, shortly after the sale, my brother-in-law left.
Okay.
And so we truly had a brand new leadership team now with our organization. And now we're in a position to really get to implementation. But it took some selling internally to get people on board.
Mm-hmm.
And there was resistance all through the process.
Right.
From getting them to implementation and then through that initial implementation process. There was resistance.
Yeah. Have you seen some growth within the members of the leadership team? Because I know that, as we go through an implementation, there's often challenging conversations because not everyone's opinion or objectives always align. And when you get into these conversations and it's requiring people to be pretty open, not just in what they say, but also how they receive what other people are saying? Were you able to see some changes and some progress in how your leadership team leads?
Absolutely. We're now talking about things, and there's a tool within the process called IDS, and it comes up every week in our L10 meeting.
Okay.
And it has really put the right things in place to talk about. Those things aren't always comfortable to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our new mantras is what's not being said that needs to be said regarding this hurdle or this opportunity or this challenge. And it's been very, very helpful. And I've seen growth. Our entire team has experienced growth like I've never experienced before in my career in leading teams. It's been a lot of growth in a short amount of time. We've only been doing this for 18 months, and I've seen tremendous growth.
Yeah, it's sometimes I think a little bit of a shock to people when the process first starts, because they are jumping into conversations that can be, challenging and sometimes even a little difficult to have. Yeah. But hey, what other things did you find in that implementation process that maybe got people out of their comfort zones?
I think the first thing you do in your focus day is we focused on our accountability chart.
Right.
And that was a challenging process in itself. Like, who's the visionary? Who's the integrator? Right people in the right seats, and really just going through that entire process. Mm-hmm. Hey, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity for it?
Right.
Right. And in us going through that together as a team, talking about each other was challenging, but so valuable.
Right.
To make sure that everybody is in the right seat on the bus, right? Because that's the thing we learned from Jim Collins 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, it's funny, people that are watching this may not even know what EOS is, and I'll give you just a quick idea. But EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's a collection of tools and disciplines that really help entrepreneurial organizations break through barriers to growth and get more of whatever it is that they want out of their business. And in doing that, we really make companies better at three things. One is vision, the other is traction, and healthy. Vision is just aligning and getting on the same page with where you want to go as an organization and how you plan to get there. Traction is bringing that vision down to the ground so that you're operating on it with discipline and accountability every day. And then healthy means just becoming a more cohesive, functional, open, and honest team. And so it starts at the leadership level. And as you know, as things go with the leadership team, so they go with the rest of the company. So then the rest of the process, once that's in place at the leadership team level, is to press these things down into the organization so that everybody is operating on that same vision. Everybody is operating with discipline and accountability, and everybody is more healthy in the working relationships that they have in the company. So it really builds a more cohesive team. Everybody is rowing in the same direction. So would you say that I've kind of summed that up fairly accurately?
Perfect. Perfect. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it does.
Okay. So what has it meant to FEI? Now that this has been in place for a little while, you're getting into your quarterlies and really starting to make this a perpetual way that you're operating.
Yeah, the biggest benefit to us has been the alignment and focus that it's driven. I mean, if you think about, you started with the accountability chart, which was really helpful. It's unique. It's uniquely different than a traditional organizational chart, right? But going through that process was really helpful. But soon after that, you go straight into your VTO, your Vision Traction Organizer, right? So you mentioned vision, which is a big part of this. And the biggest part of vision in companies is their lack of their ability to cast the vision downstream of the organization.
Right.
This forces it. So this forces that everybody within your company, everybody on the team, at the leadership level and down, they're all clear. Everybody's clear on what are we doing, why are we doing it, and what's my role in it. And I think the process has completely driven that for us. So we are all aligned. I mean, we are shoulder to shoulder. We don't always agree, right? Right in the L10, and we still have really good conversations regarding our issues that every company has, but we're aligned. It's just driven alignment and focus. And when I say focus, we're now, so we've taken our VTO, and part of the VTO is you have 8 questions that you answer, right? You take them through, like you take your teams through these, and you set your 10-year goal, your vision, 10-year vision, your 3-year target, and your 1-year picture. And then you work the entire company in a 90-day increment, right? And in those 90 days, you've got 5 to 7 rocks. That's it. Those are your big targets that you're focused on, right? For those 90 days. And then your weekly meeting is just, is that on track or is it off track? If it's off track, why? Let's take it to the issue. Yeah, let's talk about it. So it's really driven the focus and the alignment with accountability. Right. And putting all of those in a really simple construct that we can drive accountability and make sure we're all focused on the right things at the right time that are going to get us to that vision.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that comes up from time to time as we're talking to new clients is they look at EOS and they love it, but they may be a little tied to some other tool or something in the bag, and we try to help them understand that part of the power of this is the purity. Is you've got to pick one operating system for your company and go with that. You can't pick and choose different parts and pieces from others, or it's simply not going to function in the most, the optimal way that it should. Did you encounter any of those?
Not exactly that way, but similar. So, and I know what you mean. Like there could be other things that you've always done, you want to hold on to, like a process or a tool within that you use, or there's some other new shiny new tool that comes out that you implement. Oh, that looks really good. Let's pull that in. We haven't had that as much because we were so chaotic, so to speak. But what we did have was this concept of, well, this is all great, but we'll just use parts and pieces of this. Right. There were people on the team that were like, well, we're just going to, this is great. I really like how we develop our rocks, but maybe we're going to run our L10 meetings a little different than the called out agenda calls for. And what I would suggest to people is don't fall for that. I'm sure it can be
just detrimental to the efficient process.
Yeah, it could look like a good thing to do. It could look like, oh wow, that's a good thing to do. We could just run it our way and do this. But I would just say, my advice to anybody would be just trust the process.
That's funny that you say that because we say that all the time. You gotta trust the process.
We learned that. Like, you've got to trust the process.
Right.
We've got, it's interesting, John, have you ever been like, when you were introduced to somebody says, hey, have you heard the new song by so-and-so artist or whatever, and you hadn't heard it yet.
Right.
Whereas, have you seen the new car by BMW or whatever, and you haven't seen it yet? But the minute you hear it, and the minute you see it, now you see it everywhere, and you hear it all the time.
Yep.
That's how it was for you at EOS with us. So all of a sudden, we're like, oh, we have this many of our members that are operating on EOS.
That's great.
And we start having conversations with our members that are now also on EOS, and we have a subgroup of our membership that has formed this group that is our EOS implemented companies.
Nice.
It's really cool, but we've learned a lot from them too. And some of them have had that same challenge you spoke of.
Yeah.
Where they've either tried to bring other components in and failed, or looked at the EOS as, oh, I'll just do these parts of it, but we're not going to do this part of it.
Right.
And it has not worked. I have not seen any case where where it's worked.
Now, were you ever, once you read Traction, were you ever tempted to try to do this on your own? Did you ever say, this makes so much sense, we can implement this?
For sure. We thought that in the beginning. I thought in the beginning, arrogantly thought, oh, we can do that. I mean, this is not that. Right. You said it, simple.
Right.
It is meant to be simple, right? It simplifies
yes
everything in your business, but it is not easy. It's not simplistic. And I think having a third-party implementer in our business once a quarter, and then for the 2-day annual, and then available for calls from time to time has been really part of its success. And one of those companies, that's a member company of ours that I've talked to, they 15 years ago did self-implementation.
Okay.
But they quickly brought on an implementer and are still using that implementer. Not for every quarter and for every quarterly.
Right.
After the first 2 years, but they are absolutely still engaged with their original implementer in a big way, because it's really valuable to have a new set of eyes and ears in your business, that you can bounce things off.
And it's interesting. We have a very structured way of going through implementations, of leading our clients through implementations, so that it's another repeatable process, so that we know the success we drive when we follow the process. But it also frees an implementer to bring their own personality as a facilitator and their own experience as a coach into the mix of that process, because we've got that kind of nailed down. This is what we're going to do and how we're going to follow the process. But now we get a chance to also step back and see the personalities that are evolving in the room, how they fit together, and make sure that we're, really on top of the dynamic that's going on within that. So I've heard a lot of companies that started off self-implementing, and then they stepped back, and you as the integrator, it's usually the integrator that has to play that role of implementer, and they're thinking, I have a day job. I don't know that I need, I don't have the bandwidth to really be doing this, as with as much effort and time as it's going to take. So once they get, an implementer that's a true EOS implementer in the room, they get to step back and say, okay, now I get to really look at this from an objective perspective as the new integrator, or integrator for my company. So has that integrator role been challenging?
Not really. I mean, it's been
kind of falls right within your personality.
It does. It fits really well, and I'm glad we have the implementer, and I didn't try to be the implementer and the integrator. That would have been really challenging.
Right.
I think that would have been a whole another level of challenge for us as an organization. But it's been fantastic. I love the idea of a visionary and an integrator, and how we're running the company.
Yeah. I know, as I mentioned, there will be people that watch this that are pretty unfamiliar with EOS. And since you've lived that role of bringing it from idea to, fruition within FEI, what have I not asked about that you think would be important for somebody that's looking at this to know or be thinking about?
I think the first thing that was a challenge for us in implementation was that I wanted to go faster. Like I told you earlier, that I'm eager for action.
Right.
That comes from my sales background and maybe my sports background, and liking to win and being eager to get things done. But I think you have to trust that part of the process too. Like the way that EOS teaches implementers to come in and teach the process, in the beginning was frustrating to me, because I was like, okay, I get it. Let's go.
Right.
Let's get the whole team on board now. But you've got to, again, I think it came back to trust the process. Trust that we're going to go through these pieces in the right way through the 2 years. It's a 2-year journey, right? Of getting it done. But I was ready. Like I literally left our first focus day and was like, what are we waiting for? I want to call the whole team and get everybody on board. Everybody should be running it out tomorrow. I guess that would be my biggest piece of advice or feedback would be, just as eager as you are to get there, just trust it.
Right. Because once you go from focus day to vision building day one, and the first part of vision building day one is to go back and say, all right, let's talk about how well you're doing. And you probably hadn't become totally proficient at all the things that you had learned on focus day.
Oh, we're still not totally proficient in these things. Yeah, it's a process, but it's you grow and you learn and you get better, and so does the business. And
Right.
That's the most fun thing to see.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I met with another friend of mine whose company runs this. He has an engineering firm that, in general, people in that industry plateau at about 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
They implemented EOS and in about 4 years grew to 120.
Wow.
And he said the biggest part of it was the people side, because they were all of a sudden able, using the accountability chart, which you mentioned, but also the people analyzer, to really help drive corporate culture. And he said the culture now has become very intentional. They knew what they wanted in the company culture and were able to structure that, make it very clear, so that everybody that's hired there now, he has this graphic that he walks through about, the purpose of the company and the roles that everybody plays and how they fit into that. So just, he took it and he kind of augmented it a little bit just to make it a way to really get a consistent group of people together that fit that corporate culture like a glove.
Yeah.
Were there any tools that popped up out of the process that you found to be something that was kind of an unexpected, really nice surprise that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, I think I mentioned the first one I'll mention is IDS.
Mm-hmm.
So your issues.
Which is so simple.
It's so simple, but it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Having a place to store the issues, but I kind of wish they didn't call it issues, because sometimes they are literally opportunities.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes they are challenges. Sometimes they're hurdles. Sometimes there's things in your way. And how do we get to the root cause? Like, it teaching us the process of, companies often have their issues and they discuss them, but they just discuss them. And then they come to the next meeting and they're still discussing these issues.
They feel like they're making progress.
Right? But that tool in teaching you how to IDS and get to root cause.
Right.
And what does solve look like? Asking the team, what does solve look like? And then getting confirmation. Is this solved? Is it really solved, or do we need to keep it on the issues list?
Yeah.
And it's either staying there or going to long-term issues list. It's been really, that's been surprisingly the best tool in the process.
Yeah.
For us has been IDS.
Yeah. It's funny, as I've become more and more, ingrained in the EOS world, one of the things I'm having to hold myself back from is I want to teach it to my kids.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're all young adults. You should be operating this way.
Right.
And have to step back and say, okay.
Yes.
They can't take all of this with them. So
I find it's John doing that all the time. I think I told you last week that I had a meeting with our pastor at church.
Yeah.
And I was like, you've got to be running church. That's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not doing this. How are you doing it?
Yeah.
It's just so powerful. And you do have that temptation to get others on board.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been great.
Yeah, man.
Hopefully, people that are, able to view this are going to get a real sense for, what EOS is like and what it can do for the company.
Great stuff. Thanks, John.
Good deal. Thank you.
All right, brother.